Hello viewers, welcome back to another session. Today we are going to learn the last topic, that is death, dying and bereavement. Now this is an important phase that every individual should go through, and according to a layman's understanding, let us see what death means. Death in terms of the last phase or the closing phase of an individual's life, and this is being followed with regard to old age. Now usually we understand that after old age it is death that comes. Let us go to the objectives of this particular lesson. The first objective, understand the meaning of death, understand how death at different stages of lifespan, and also an important theory, that is Kubler-Ross theory of dying. These three objectives will make us understand about this entire lesson on death, dying and bereavement. Let us see how death means, how we understand death. Let us understand the technical background of how death is explained. Usually death is explained in two ways. The first, the functional death and brain death. Functional death is defined by an absence of heartbeat and breathing. That means the two indicators of life. One is heartbeat, the other is breath. So if these two indicators are not functioning, that means there is a functional death. But the medical research has gone beyond the understanding of functional death. They have also considered the brain function as an important indicator to claim somebody as dead. Therefore, not only the heartbeat and the respiration or the breathing, but it is the brain functioning that is the second aspect of understanding death, that is the brain death. When you are talking about brain death, all the functional activities of the brain should also cease, then only we can identify or understand that there is death that has taken place. So unless the brain is active, we cannot declare somebody as dead. So it also contributes the major vital functions of the brain activities, which needs to be considered in indicating somebody as dead. Our next understanding of the objective, that means when you are talking about death, death is a lifespan perspective. It cannot be an understanding that only after old age people die. People may die even at young age. People may die even at childhood. So let us see how lifespan perspective is explaining death at different stages of life, beginning from infancy till old age. Now we will see on a sequence how death is being experienced by different stages of lifespan. First heading, we will see infancy, that is death in infancy and childhood. We need to understand that the birth or the birth itself may give rise to many complications. As a result, the infant or the neonate also have a possibility of going through this sort of a phase. So there must be some significant genetic or any birth related complications that may take place and leading to death in such individuals. And also during infancy, even a healthy child may die. What could be the reason? The concept is sudden infant death syndrome. The sudden infant death syndrome is significant by indicating that there is an unusual, unidentified reason for the death of the infant. It could also be called as a crib death. As a result, now there is a lot of trauma that is being experienced by the respective parent. Now the loss of child is almost like a loss of their own body part. So this creates a lot of trauma, grief in the individual's family if the child is no more. Continuation with infancy, even in the childhood, there are certain possibilities or risks involved which causes death. It could be due to accidents, it could be due to any man-made disaster, or it could be due to any infectious diseases, or it could be due to any genetic problems that may lead to death among children. The stress caused due to death in family members, especially in infants and children, is huge for the family members, especially the parents. So how to cope with such stress is very difficult. It requires a technical and a professional approach in helping such family members. As an individual, every individual goes through this sort of a phase when there is a loss of a loved member. Unfortunately, not many parents are equipped to come out of such trauma, to come out of such stress. As a result, they need professional help in terms of alleviating their stress levels and depression, and sometimes they need lot of social support in order to cope with such loss. After infancy and childhood death, let us now discuss about death in adolescence. We have discussed earlier in the earlier lesson how adolescent phase is an important phase, and it is considered to be one of the period where they are indulging into risky behaviors. The risky behaviors could be anything. They may even lead to accidents. Risky behaviors are the behaviors where the individual is engaged into certain dangerous activities, whether it could be a drug addiction, whether it could be catching a running bus or catching a running train, or indulging into other antisocial element behaviors. Therefore, the risky behaviors are quite evident, which may contribute to death in these adolescent age groups. So, there are certain accidents like road accidents or sometimes suicide because of certain psychological, social problems where the individual is experiencing, may get into this sort of a dangerous decision where they attempt suicide, or sometimes they even commit suicide, and they may be also victims of certain homicide where somebody is killing them based on some robbery or some family disputes. They are targeted. As a result, death may occur even in adolescent age groups. The research indicates that motor vehicle accidents are quite high among this particular age group, that is adolescents. And in addition to motor vehicle accidents, it is certain diseases like HIV/AIDS and cancer are contributing to death among this particular age groups. I would also like to mention here that adolescents who are prone to certain illnesses may also experience death. Adolescents who are prone to certain terminal illnesses may at some point die. So, it becomes a very important role for the family members and the medical professionals to handle such adolescents. Usually, what is the psychological state of such adolescents who are diagnosed with terminal illness like cancer? Now, they have elevated levels of anger, they are frustrated, and they do not want to cooperate with the medical personnel, as it creates lot of anger and hostility towards their diagnosis. Therefore, it becomes very crucial in working with such adolescents who are on the verge of death. Another important lifespan phase is young adulthood. Now, how death can take place in such age groups? A very crucial age group, a very productive age group where young adults are engaged into career goals, relationships, and establishments of their respective life. This becomes a very important phase, and if death occurs in such individuals, the entire family is affected and the entire community is also affected. Let us see what are the various risk factors that may lead to death. It seems the accident proneness or the accidents are continuous even in this particular age group. There is no exception that early adults or young adults do not get into accidents. It could be a road accident, it could be a natural disaster, it could be a man-made disaster where these young adults may die due to these problems. Sometimes due to illness, or sometimes due to infectious diseases, sometimes due to social conflicts, due to emotional conflicts. They may also commit suicide and homicide. All these major contributors can also cause death in this particular young adults. Death at such point, especially in young adults, seems close to unthinkable. That means one cannot think that one will die at that particular age, because they are engaged or engrossed into the developmental and prospective life plans and goals in terms of marriage, in terms of settlement, in terms of having children. All it's a productive age overall. Therefore, they cannot think of death at that particular stage, followed by suicide, homicide, Another important threat is HIV or AIDS, where this sort of individuals' practices or lifestyle practices may also lead to death. And chronic diseases such as hypertension and diabetes, autoimmune diseases and many other life-threatening diseases may be affected even in the young adulthood. An overall understanding of young adulthood and death is that it not necessarily that accidents are common, but it is mostly, the statistics prove that it is mostly the infectious diseases and chronic illnesses like renal failure, cancer and tuberculosis. If untreated, then definitely they are causing to death. Now let us see how death is experienced, especially in the middle adulthood, that means the middle-aged individual, how this death can take place in such age groups. The most frequent cause of death in middle adulthood is heart attack or stroke. Although the unexpectedness of such a death does not allow for preparation. As per the research, not every individual is prepared for death, when we all know that death is sudden. In some situations, death is slow process, where one individual is diagnosed with a terminal illness and the individual is for sure going to die in 1 or 2 days. So, there is a slow process of dying. Therefore, it becomes very important that sudden death is considered to be one of the instant and painless process which every midlife individual prefers, because there is no pain involved, there is sudden death. Therefore, it is most preferable kind of death many individuals choose during the middle age. Even the research have mentioned that when asked by many of the middle-aged individuals, they say that they would like an instant and painless death that does not involve loss of any body part. Especially when you compare the cancer patient, they undergo lot of pain and this pain is much more suffering. Therefore, many midlife individuals would prefer a painless death which is sudden and instant. Now we are coming to the end of lifespan, that is old age. How death is understood or explained in this particular old age. After living so many years, after living with a disease, after living with so many problems, coming to this particular age group, they are now almost prepared to die. That means they have understood, they must have experienced their wife dying or husband dying, or they must have experienced the family members, friends dying. By this time they are almost prepared or accepting that death is for sure and they have to go one day. So, this sort of an acceptance stage we will notice in the old age people. The most likely cause of death among the elderly or in the old age is because of the cardiovascular diseases, respiratory related diseases and also certain other chronic illnesses. And due to degeneration of the biological system, they may also experience death. Now, since we have understood the overall lifespan perspective of death, now let us see the dying. How dying is understood from the lifespan perspective and how the theory is explaining us or helping us to understand how this process takes place. According to Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, in her book on death and dying, the dying patient proceeds along a path characterized by various stages. That means it is understood that this particular theorist has specifically given us a highlights of how death takes place in different stages. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross theory explains 5 stages of dying. The first stage is denial, second stage is anger, third stage bargaining, fourth stage depression, fifth stage acceptance. Now, let us explain this individually. Usually in the first stage, the person denies. Say for example, a HIV patient who has come for a HIV test definitely is diagnosed with HIV positive. That means if you can counsel the person is not ready to accept that he is an HIV patient and he has contacted with this particular disease. He will again go for a recheck of his blood test. They are not convinced that they are diagnosed with this particular disease. Hence, they go for second time, third time, fourth time, a continuous recheck of the blood test. But again, it confirms that they are diagnosed with HIV positive. That means the person is not ready to accept that he is diagnosed with either HIV or cancer. So, they deny the fact that they are diagnosed with such dreadful disease. The second important stage, that is anger. Why anger comes? The individual has a feeling that why he is targeted, why me? That question of why me is haunted, angry at having to die without being given the chance to everything that they wanted to do. That means no opportunity to correct their health, no opportunity to live further. So, they are frustrated. As a result, they are angry towards themselves. They do not want to die in such condition. So, after denial, anger comes. Then the third stage is bargaining. Bargaining, generally we are considering in terms of economic bargaining and purchases. But here what are we bargaining with? Bargaining may attempt to forestall death by bargaining for extra time. They want to live further. They want to live for some more years. If somebody is diagnosed, what is the question that you want to ask them? They would say, I do not want to die now. So, this sort of a bargaining comes. The fourth important is depression. That means depressed about ending of life, no hope anymore. I know I have no hope, I have to continue in this life like this, suffering. Therefore, finally the fifth stage is accepting one's illness. Yes, now it is confirmed, I have to accept, and at some point I may have to die. So, these 5 stages are very essential, which will be crucial in death education. That means if at all if you are working in any hospice care, or if at all you are working in any kind of dying and bereavement process, it becomes very easier for you to understand these 5 stages and help the individual to accept death. Now, we will talk about bereavement, an important concept to notice, especially with death and dying process. Now, bereavement is an important response after the death of a loved one. Bereavement is an objective fact. Usually, when we are talking about death, the family members cry. The family members are in deep agony, they are depressed, they weep, they cry. There are certain cultural factors which are associated with bereavement. There are some cultures who mourn when somebody is dead. There are some cultures who celebrate when somebody dies. So, there are culturally bounded when you are talking about bereavement. Bereavement is different from grief. Grief is the immediate response to the death of the individual, but bereavement is a long, prolonged period of sadness manifested in terms of depression. People who are bereaving, now they are considered to be at risk in terms of, if at all they are lacking social support, they may also go into depression and serious problems related to depression, and even it may lead to suicidal ideations also. So, it is very essential that after the death of the loved one, it is very important to consider the family members who are bereaving and who needs professional care. Let us summarize now. So far we have discussed, this is the last unit that we are discussing under this course, that is Human Growth and Development, where we discussed today on death, dying and bereavement. We have understood the meaning of death. Death is in terms of, there are 2 factors which determine death, that is the functional death and brain death. And we have also understood the lifespan perspective of death, how death can take place in infancy, how death can take place in childhood, adolescence, and different stages that we have so far discussed. And we have also understood the dying and the process of dying, how the theory developed by Kubler-Ross explains the stages, the 5 stages, that is denial, anger, bargaining, the 4th that is depression, the 5th stage is acceptance. So, as a death education is necessary, this theory will contribute a lot for you people in terms of your application in working with such individuals. And finally, bereavement. We cannot stop once the family member is no more. It needs to be continued. The intervention, the care and concern needs to be understood from the caregiver point of view, from the family member's point of view, where bereavement is an important phase and every individual will react and respond in different manner with regard to the loss of the loved one. As a result, bereavement is important to be considering because the psychological factors are affecting in the individual's life in terms of depression. And we need to understand how bereavement is affecting the individual's psychological well-being. We will have some questions for this lesson. The first question, what is the meaning of death? Second question, what are the various stages of lifespan which explains death? Third question, explain Kubler-Ross theory of dying. Another question, what is bereavement? What are the factors involved in bereavement? You have certain references that are mentioned in the text. I would like to suggest that you can go through two references. One is Harlock, the author name is Harlock. The title of the book is Developmental Psychology, publisher Tata McGraw-Hill Education. Another book for your reference, the author name is Laura E. Burke. The title of the book is Lifespan Development, publisher Pearson Education.